We will reconvene the 71st meeting of the Mass Gaming Commission on July 11th, 2013, for the purpose of discussing the suitability recommendation for PPE Casino Resorts, MA LLC. And we will start out with Director Wells, although she can invite our guest to introduce our guest and invite him to speak.
Absolutely. I'd like to introduce Joe Weinberg, who's representing the PPE Casino Resorts here today. Like the IEB's experience with the Mass Gaming applicant, the experience with Cordish was also extremely favorable as far as their responsiveness to inquiries, their ability to produce documents, and their forthrightness during the interview process for their qualifier. So, just turn that over to Mr. Weinberg if he wants to make any comments just in the beginning of this proceeding, and then I'll go ahead with the summary of the report.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. One, it's exciting for us to be here today and to move on to the next phase of this project. Just as a way of a quick introduction, and then we can get into the presentation. But we are a little over 100-year-old private business. We are one of the leading real estate, entertainment, and gaming developers and operators in the country. Our projects have been recognized by institutions like the Urban Land Institute for 7 awards of excellence, which is more than double what any other developer in the world has received from this industry organization. In the gaming world, our projects have been recognized for their excellence and both from a design and operational standpoint. As you heard earlier today, this has been an extremely thorough process. It's been a very, I think, good relationship between our company as well as staff, and we look forward to working with staff and the Commission going forward. One just final comment, one of the things we think is a real point of difference for our company is the fact that we are private. I am a partner in the company. All of our principals are involved day to day in every facet of our projects, both on the development side as well as on the operational side. I'm sure staff can attest to the fact that whenever there is a question of us, it's usually me or one of my partners who are personally answering the questions without intermediaries. So we think that's a real strong point of difference for our company and how we approach our projects, and we look forward to being able to personally work with you all going forward.
Just before you go ahead, I just ask you the same question I asked the earlier applicant. There's been some difficulty finding a location. Can you give us an update on where that stands and what your degree of confidence is?
Yes, I actually meant to preempt your question, so thank you for asking it. We are working very closely in Leominster in terms of working with the mayor in the negotiations of a host agreement, working with the council on going through the whole informational process. We have land that we have in the city. It's an outright purchase of land, so it would not introduce any new qualifiers to the project. So we're working now diligently on pursuing Leominster as our host city.
I'll just reiterate what I said to the earlier one, that our schedule, our deadlines are what the deadlines are, with the exception of the issue of possibly waiving the certification of the final vote. But we very much want you to be a player. It's important to us for reasons everybody's heard, but the deadlines are what the deadlines are.
And we're aware of that, and we've made that very clear to the governmental representatives that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And I think we have, there's a good kind of working understanding between both parties that those are the dates we're working towards.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I'd like to start off by introducing Ted Grove, who is the sort of the lead investigator and attorney for the Spectrum Gaming Group, and also the lead drafter of the report. I'd like to commend him on the job that he did in this, and working cooperatively with the folks at the Cordish and PPE Casino Resorts. So I was very happy with the result, and I'd like to just proceed, as far as the report goes. PPE Casino Resorts, Mass LLC, that's similar to the Mass Gaming applicant that we discussed earlier this morning. That's an entity that was created basically for the purpose to apply for this Massachusetts license. So that was created on January 9th of 2013. It has no direct entity affiliates. The members are Jonathan Cordish, Blake Cordish, Reed Cordish, Joseph Weinberg, who's here today, and Charles Jacobs. They have an association with the Cordish Company. That's more, so the umbrella company. That's not a qualifier here because they are a separate entity, but we did look into the company and some of the business dealings. The Cordish is in good standing, and we did do an investigation into that company. It's associated with PP Mass in that it shares office space, common employees and owners, preferred access to resources of other Cordish company entities, et cetera. It's generally a major real estate developer and operator of entertainment businesses. We also looked into the Cordish Family 2 LLC, which generally is a family investment vehicle and a lender, and that's generally controlled by David Cordish, who would be sort of the patriarch in this organization. During the course of the investigation, we looked into this group's gaming operations, interests, and experience. Their first foray into this world of gaming, they were a developer of the Hard Rock complexes in Tampa and Hollywood, Florida. They were not a manager or an operator at this time. They was more in lines with their prior business dealings as being a real estate developer. They then were involved with Indiana Live, a gaming operation which they developed and managed until 2010. So it was between 2007 and 2010. And then they also are involved with Maryland Live, which is another gaming operation. They developed and operated that since June of 2012. So it's a relatively recent operation, but from the investigation we found that also very successful. So the investigators, during the course of looking into this entity and the associates, checked with different states and what information they could get from different states on these qualifiers and the applicant. In Maryland, they investigated the Maryland Live Casino. They found that, according to regulators, no real compliance issues other than minimal and routine regulatory matters. Now, I would note that they've only been open since June of 2012, but that seems to be going extremely well as far as the regulatory and compliance portion of their operation. They also checked with Indiana and Indiana Live. The revenue on Indiana Live was on the high end of the industry average, but that operation did struggle financially due to debt load. And I can have Ted Grove explain a little bit more of that in detail if the commissioners have any more questions. They had a management agreement with Cordish Company, and that ended up being there's a lawsuit involved in that, and they ended up terminating that relationship. That settlement was reached in July of 2012, and again, similar to Maryland, the investigation revealed a minor history of regulatory violations, according to those investigators. They also, because of other business dealings, they checked with Florida, New Jersey, Kansas, and Pennsylvania. The companies in Florida, there was some litigation between Cordish and an Indian tribe that ended in favor of Cordish, and they looked into that issue. In New Jersey, there was an unsuccessful bid to buy property after the company Tropicana was denied relicensure. In Kansas, Penn National ended up buying Cordish's interest in Kansas International LLC, and in Pennsylvania, they're competing for a license right now, so they're going through that process. So in looking at the financial suitability review, The investigators took a very strong look at PPE Maryland for two reasons. One, that funding stream for the mass project in large part is going to come from that operation. So they're looking at that operation for their financial stability to fund the Massachusetts project. In addition, the expectation is that the Massachusetts project would be similar, to the Maryland project, so they wanted to take a look at those operations and get an idea of what we'd be looking at in Massachusetts. And that investigation went very well, and that they received a sort of a favorable review from investigators. The investigation, as I mentioned, there's also this Cordish Family 2 LLC. That's owned by David Cordish individually, as well as through two trusts, and that is a funding source or potential funding stream for financing for the casino operation. So we looked at that, and that also received a favorable review. I've looked in the report. You can see that there was a section on significant litigation that the company had been involved in. They do highlight three matters: the PPE Casino Resorts Indiana LLC versus Indiana Downs LLC. That was a management contract issue, and that was settled. They also have the Power Plant Entertainment LLC versus the Seminole Tribe of Florida. That matter has also been settled. And there was also another lawsuit, Trump Hotels and Casino Resorts versus Power Plant Entertainment LLC, Joseph F. Weinberg, Richard T. Fields et al. That case ended up being dismissed with each side assuming their own expenses. So the detail of that's in the report. Just want to highlight that for the members of the commission. We can also, any of us here can answer if there are further questions on that. As I indicated earlier, we also looked into the compliance history. Indiana and Maryland both indicated, similar to in the mass gaming application that we analyzed, their compliance was below concerns of industry standards. So both jurisdictions did not have significant issues of concern which would rise to the level of deeming that these individual applicants or the individual qualifiers of the applicant would be unsuitable. We also looked into the operations of the entity, in particular their compliance plan and their compliance committee. The plan that this entity intends to use in Massachusetts, they want to use the Maryland operation as a framework, although there is some flexibility, based on what the needs are in Massachusetts and if there's any input by the commission on the compliance plan. We did identify a couple of issues looking through that. One was the no minutes kept of the meetings of the compliance committee. So in my recommendation for if the applicant is found suitable and then given a license, I would suggest that be part of the condition of licensure. Additionally, same issue with their internal audit committee. No minutes of those meetings kept. I would make that same recommendation should the applicant be given the license. And also, I would recommend the commission require submission of and strict adherence to comprehensive compliance plan satisfactory to the commission. Similar that they, if they have the once the compliance plan settled, that they can submit that to the commission for your review, and you can take a look at that. So those are all issues that I believe can be addressed at the licensing stage once you've had an opportunity to look at their whole application. I don't think that the applicant would have any issues with that going forward, so we're in agreement that that is easily remedied and we can go forward on that issue. Similar to the other applicant that was before us today, same issue with the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and money laundering concerns. We would want those kind of plans to be submitted to the commission for their review. Similar, yeah, I would expect that condition I would recommend for all applicants, so that's nothing in particular to Cordish or PPE Entertainment. So generally, this applicant was has the award for the fewest number of qualifiers. So it was as long as terms of the chart on my wall, they had the smallest list. So the applicant, their financial suitability and their good character, honesty, integrity, and their business practices, you can see in the report, has all been demonstrated through their prior business experience and our investigation into their finances. We also conducted the suitability investigations into the individual qualifiers. As I've already been through another applicant, it's sort of the details on that. I won't reiterate everything I've said, but generally, same kind of investigation we do for each one of the qualifiers for each one of the applicants. So they're all looked at, and you'll see in my cover letter, all those considerations are taken into account when evaluating the recommended suitability of the applicants and the qualifiers. So all those criteria were in fact looked at for each of the individual qualifiers. And I'll just, as an example, run through. Hold on. So, for example, they verify their name, their information, date of birth, address, etc., their employment history, criminal record, education, really refer to their professional and gaming licenses, directorships and stock holdings, civil litigation records, bankruptcy issues, property ownerships, financial suitability evaluation. They do an income analysis, a net worth analysis, and generally do a summary as to financial suitability. In each one of these individual qualifiers, David Cordish, Jonathan Cordish, Blake Cordish, Reed Cordish, Charles Jacobs, and Joseph Weinberg. The summary as to financial suitability was that they would recommend that the commission find them suitable. They were checked for political contributions in contradiction to Massachusetts law. There was no issues there. And their references were checked. Media coverage on individuals was checked to see if there's anything out there on the web, in trade magazines, anything that could be of concern. And those were all checked. So I can report to the commission that ultimately the IEB recommends, subject to the conditions that I've already mentioned, which would be recommended as conditions of licensure, that the applicant be deemed suitable by the commission and allowed to go forward in the process. Similar to the other applicants, I'm also including in my cover letter the recommendation that as their entity changes, and things may change, it's probably less likely with this group because it's a privately held company. It's different than the other 10 applicants that we have, but that any changes we would be notified so we can investigate. Also, given that there are several pending instances of litigation involving the applicant, the IEB recommends that the applicant simply be required to update us as to how that's going and what the status is of that, which I don't think is any issue with Mr. Weinberg. So that generally is the overview. This was, the small number of qualifiers definitely helped expedite the process, but all of them were, they were investigated to the same degree that all other qualifiers are investigated through this process, and pleased to report a favorable recommendation by the IEB.
Thank you. This time, let's start with Commissioner Stebbins. Do you have some questions?
I had just 2 points. First of all, Mr. Weinberg, you commented on the fact you've been recognized by the ULI. I've had experience working with the ULI, and congratulate that. I know that's no small feat. Any thoughts or reaction, Mr. Weinberg, on your part about the comments in the report with respect to your financial overview? Obviously, building off the success you're anticipating in Maryland is the financing source in Massachusetts, and the IEB's requirement or suggestion that we need to continue to monitor your ongoing financial needs, and again, additional investors as they may be identified. Do you have any thoughts or feedback on that?
Well, I think it would be routine if we brought in any additional investors that they would have to be subject to the same degree of scrutiny that that we have. So that no problem at all with that. Just as a point of clarification on the financing for this project, we have the ability to either finance it as individuals or to use cash flow from other entities or the Cordish Family 2 source, which is kind of a banking, internal banking source. So we're not dependent on any one of these areas. So from the ability to, to do this project, and we may in fact want to put some type of debt on it in the future, but it's not a requirement for us to be able to execute on this project.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good. Mr. Zuniga?
Yeah, thank you. I had a couple of questions. The report does mention the instance in Indiana where the company or the venture struggled due to debt load. I was wondering if you could expound a little bit, give us some of the circumstances around it, and in general, of course, and lessons learned maybe that you derived from that.
Well, the lessons learned is don't work for somebody else. This was a project where we were brought on at a fee basis as a developer and manager. When we came into the picture, the owner had already incurred $350 million worth of debt. So it was unrelated to the actual casino that we were responsible for building and managing. So as the director had mentioned, what we were responsible for in terms of building and operating the facility, it operated at among the highest levels, not only in Indiana, but also in the entire Midwest. The problem was that the owner had taken on debt to buy out a partner, to build a racetrack, to do a lot of things that were unrelated to the actual dollars that went into the casino. It is instructive from a positive standpoint, though, because it's a similar situation. That was a similar situation, not vis-a-vis the debt issue, but in Indiana, there's 13 licenses. 2 were slots-only licenses, and 11 were full gaming licenses. So we had the Indiana Live was a slots-only license. So we were able to very positively compete with slots-only against 11 other facilities that had full gaming and unlimited number of devices and gaming positions. So in that respect, it shows that because of the way we treat the design and the development and the management of our facilities, we can very positively compete with slots only against larger full casino properties.
Anything, do you want to expound on that from the report?
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I think Mr. Weinberg has encapsulated the explanation very well. I don't really have anything to add at that point.
Well, on this, I ask a question, I'll just jump in. I had asked a question of you, because as I read the report, there was apparently Cordish brought in this fellow Gomes who appeared to be a quality manager, as best we could tell. At some point, Gomes left for undisclosed reasons, and then there was this fallout. And I asked the question whether there was any relationship between the two, and A, and B, why did Gomes leave? You've responded, but I think the commission might be interested in hearing that.
Yes, we had examined that, and Mr. Gomes and Cordish had some partnership disagreements, essentially over the amount of interest that Mr. Gomes would have in the partnership going forward. There were some disagreements over the performance of each party as far as marketing each other's involvement in the partnership. And also during this time frame, the Cordish company was looking for a possible association with another gaming company, which would, if successful, would have minimized Mr. Gomes' role in the partnership. And it looks like it was a very amicable split, but it nonetheless was for those reasons.
And it had nothing to do apparently with the subsequent problems with the facility.
It did not.
Okay.
And totally unrelated issues, yeah.
Right, okay. Commissioner Zuniga, do you have other?
Yeah, I have two others. You, from looking at the report, the company of which you are a partner has a clear, long history, as you mentioned, in the real estate development arena. When it comes to gaming operations, that history is a lot more recent. Again, without getting into the specific plans for Massachusetts, because that's really a question for our phase two, what can you tell us relative to general plans towards the future for gaming operations?
Sure. Like anything, it's in fact, most companies don't have a huge bench of people that are, because these facilities, this would actually be one of the smaller facilities for us. It'll have, several hundreds of, somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 employees. But, our Maryland Live facility has 3,000 employees. So, so what we do in all of our businesses is you have to go out and recruit and retain the best people in the industry. And I think we've shown that we've been able to do that in each of the projects we've done. As an example, the Hard Rocks that we did in Florida, the current CEO had worked for us. So Jim Allen, who's now the CEO of Hard Rock, had worked for Cordish before going over to Hard Rock. Same thing in Indiana. We operated at the highest levels. We went out and recruited and retained good people. And in Maryland, we've done the same thing. So in Maryland, we're the highest grossing casino in the entire Mid-Atlantic region. So we outgross everything in Maryland, Delaware, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, everything in Atlantic City, including Borgata. So I think we've demonstrated that we know how to go out and find and recruit and retain good people. And we would do the same thing here.
Thank you. Also, the report talks a lot about your significant experience in many areas of the country, but it did not mention New England or Massachusetts in particular. So I was wondering about your history there, if there's any examples in this market that you can point to.
We have not developed anything in Massachusetts at this point. Probably the furthest north we've been at this point is New York.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
But we're very familiar into going into new markets and developing and operating facilities. So we're doing it all the time.
Commissioner McHugh?
I just wanted to, for the record purposes, say that the documents that we have here before us are your 11-page letter, Director
Yep.
Wells, plus the 99-page redacted report, which includes, as part of those 99 pages, the executive summary.
That is
what we have
correct.
before us, yeah.
That is correct.
I wanted to ask Mr. Weinberg and Mr. Groh about the first 7 of the regulatory violations found on pages 36 and 37 of the report, and give you an opportunity to explain those. Those are different from the kids sneaking in kind of things that we discussed this morning. Those involve what looks to me in several cases, certainly the underreporting, filing a report that people knew was wrong with respect to certain income, machines removed from play due to the large amount of jackpots, and the like. So I wonder if you could comment on those. That, as I say, strike me as a different character than the things we heard about this morning.
Well, first, I think a lot of these were in the early months of the operation of the facility. We actually ended up coming in and turning over people in some of these areas and got it corrected pretty quickly. They're not. I don't think they're out of, terribly out of the ordinary, but we weren't happy with them either, and so that we made quick changes and we're able to correct the ship pretty quickly.
Were these self-reported, or were these violations that the authorities found?
You know, I
Or
don't
do you
recall
know
offhand.
at that level?
We, as a rule, most of the issues would be self-reported.
Commissioner, I can tell you that these violations caught our eye, but when you look at the violations that a company has, you look at the severity of the violations, their frequency, whether they go to the integrity of the operation, and whether they're repetitive. Do they learn their lesson after they make an error? And I think when you go through here, you look, I believe there were about 26 violations over, actually, 17 separate violations over the 26 months that Cordish was operating this casino. So just on an average basis, it's about one every 45 days. But when you examine them, they don't seem to be repetitive. There's, I believe, 3 minors entering casino, 3
Right,
violations for
right,
minors.
Right.
That's fairly insignificant for that time frame. And 1 voluntary excluded person who was placed themselves voluntarily on the exclusion list
Right.
was able to re-enter the casino.
Right.
So the other violations appear to be isolated and again, not repeated. The incident with the underreporting of slot ticket income, we examined that, we talked to Indiana about that, and actually our investigators visited the Indiana Gaming Commission and met with them. And it appeared to be, although it was a significant fine imposed, it simply appeared to be just sloppy accounting that day.
And what about the taking number 5, taking slot machines or gaming, I assume slot machines, out of play because they were yielding too big jackpots were too big?
We examined that as well, but we also looked at the amount of fine, which was a $2,500 fine imposed by the Indiana Gaming Commission, which is a signal to us that they did not take that to be a serious violation.
Also, just to give it a little bit more color, it's not unusual if you see unusual activity on a machine to go in and check it. So the problem was not, in this case, was not in going in and verifying the machine, but more so that there was a procedure with the Indiana Gaming Commission that should have been followed and wasn't followed correctly, and that's
I
what
see.
the issue was here.
And that would be consistent with a $2,500 fine as opposed to something bigger?
It would be.
I see. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I wanted to ask some questions about your compliance and your audit function and the fact that there were no minutes kept. Is that something that was overlooked, or?
It's a little bit of form over function in this case. I am one of the members of our internal audit team. So obviously, because it's my money that I'm watching, I'm pretty strict about our audit function. So what we do and what we find is the most valuable to us is we have we develop an annual audit plan, and then we have quarterly minutes to review the audits that are done, in progression. So in our audit meetings, what we're doing is we're reviewing, these 25-plus page audits in detail. And then
Are you using audit interchangeably with compliance here, or are you?
I'm going to get to compliance in a
Okay.
second.
Two
This is the
separate
internal,
committees.
two departments, the internal audit, and then I'll move to compliance after that. So internal audit, we're going through very detailed reviews of the audits, and then we have follow-up procedures that we put on a tracking sheet. So our mechanism of tracking things is through a tracking sheet, not through minutes. And we did provide to Spectrum our internal audit reports, which are very detailed and complete. And we're very proud of our internal audit function. Again, we look at it as while the Maryland Gaming Commission can come in and review it, it's, you know, we look at it as something we're doing for ourselves. So we're, you know, it's a very important function to us. So we have a system in place that we think is the most valuable to us, because it's easier for us to go to tracking sheets than to go review minutes in terms of follow-ups. On the compliance department side, which is we, unlike some states in Maryland, for instance, functions like vendor registration is done by the state. That would be a kind of a big part of what a compliance department would be looking at is, and in many states, the casino is going through all the vendor backgrounds and reviews. So in Maryland, we're not responsible for that. So a big part of what the compliance group would be doing in terms of looking at vendors, we're really not doing. Where we do keep minutes on the compliance, but on specific areas that we think are critical, like the Title 31 issues, which are the money laundering reviews. So we work very closely with law enforcement, of course, in terms of, you know, any transactions over 10,000 and monitoring those and what goes on. So we keep very complete minutes on those specific areas that we think are valuable to keep minutes for. Things like vendor registrations that are really just getting sent to the state for review. The licensing of employees gets sent to the state for approvals. So again, we have tracking sheets on these employees or these vendors have gone to the state, but it doesn't get translated into minutes because we don't find it valuable. But we have no problem in having formal minutes as part of the
Your
process.
plan actually calls for minutes,
Right,
correct?
I'm aware of that.
Okay, so
Right.
you didn't think they were valuable, but you didn't look at it as not complying with your own compliance plan.
No, I understand. We will, and we plan as a result of it being pointed out to, you know, to make that change. And we have, from a substantive standpoint, that's what we do and feel like that's, you know, valuable. We should be following that SOP and have made that change.
An important piece of compliance is training. Do you have training records?
Yes, of all employees. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, we have all kinds of training going on, which we
And you
complete
keep
files on.
records?
Absolutely.
Mr. Grow, you looked at this issue and are satisfied by reading this that you brought it to their attention, and was there any way you had to verify that these meetings actually took place, that there were compliance, the committee was actually overseeing the responsibilities they should be overseeing?
Through discussions with Mr. Weinberg, he identified who the compliance officer was and his background. But the absence of minutes really goes to the heart of regulatory oversight, because with minutes you can tell if the meetings, which are supposed to occur on a quarterly basis, are actually being held, who attends, what the agenda is, what was discussed, what concerns were raised.
But
And
did the meetings take place?
we were told that the meetings took place, and Mr. Weinberg indicates there was some information on paper, but we couldn't verify independently that these meetings occurred on a quarterly basis.
So that is being
And that's
addressed?
a change we're addressing.
Okay, very good. I was also interested, I see that the majority of your business is shopping, entertainment, sports. I was interested in the differences that you found now that you've entered gaming. What are the differences in running a business and operating a gaming facility?
Well, first we think that our background in all these different facets of entertainment and real estate development has allowed us to build and operate better facilities than our competition. In terms of, because we come from a discipline where if you set the gaming apart and you have the entertainment, the restaurants, and the retail, it's a business that you have to aggressively work every day. to make work. And I think we bring that discipline to our gaming facilities. Our background from a development standpoint, the ability to really design and build quality facilities is, there's not a lot of true developers around anymore who really design and build and develop. There's a lot of the major gaming companies have become more acquisition companies than development companies. So we think that discipline's been very helpful from us. The differences are really more on the regulatory side, and because the gaming industry is, and this is good for the public to know, that this is one of the highest regulated industries in the country. Maybe nuclear power plants might be up there, I think, but this is a business that has very, very strict regulatory environments. We'll have state agents, on the premises 24 hours a day. In terms of accounting, the systems that'll be in place for the state to be able to monitor, all the revenues going through the facility are like no other industry. The security and surveillance that provides, a safe environment for the public is really like nothing other than maybe a military institution. So the regulatory environment would really be the big difference.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Just to follow up again on the compliance, there's, you know this, but I'll say it anyway, the audit function is substantially to protect the company. The compliance is substantially to protect the public. And they're both important, and we care about both of them, but they're not duplicative functions at all with duplicative focuses. And it did, and I think you've heard this now, and this has been talked about a lot, but again, just reading the report, you sort of get the sense that you were going through the motions on compliance. You put together a 15-page plan and sort of threw it in front of Maryland, and Maryland thought it was fine, and that was the end of that. And you're hearing that doesn't cut it. But I want to also talk about the makeup of the compliance committee. I know there's a compliance officer who I think serves on that committee. But if I remember correctly, but I might not, there's meant to be at least one member of the compliance committee who is independent of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Does that occur?
Yes.
So who are the other members of the compliance
Well,
committee?
they're department heads, and then there's Al Luciani, who's our independent representative.
And what's his relationship to the company, to the world?
He's an outside, I guess consultant, you would call him. He's a former New Jersey regulator and as well as a senior gaming executive.
Okay. And is that, can either of you tell us what is the best practice for the makeup of a compliance committee in this environment?
Well, Commissioner, best practices in large national gaming companies nowadays tend to be having a totally independent compliance committee. Companies have found that if the members of the compliance committee are not independent, there may be reporting issues where they're actually vetting a marketing idea or marketing partner that is being pushed by someone above them. And if they voice an objection to an association with that potential partner, that's going to show up on their next performance review.
Right.
So by having independent members of the committee, you remove that from the equation. Here you've got a relatively small gaming operation with an operation in Maryland and potentially one here in Massachusetts. In addition, it's essentially 5 partners and a lot of family involvement. With a 3-member committee, I would say that one independent member would work in this situation. I'm not sure we need to go to a totally independent committee, but I think at least one is a very good start.
Well, so what's best practice relative to a company? Are you saying that your advice would be that one of 3 for this company is the right way to go?
That
what
is
you're
my
saying?
assessment.
Not acceptable, but the right way to go.
That would be an appropriate
Right, okay.
approach to the compliance for a company this size with that many operations, yes.
Okay. Because to make 2 points, first of all, there's been no indication anywhere that Cordis is anything other than a first-rate company, period. So don't let anything that I say suggest anything other than that. And we are very likely on the process to agreeing with this report. Having said that, this is the heart of the matter. And you had an outside independent member who didn't pick up the absolute most basic rules of the plan that he was there to oversee. So I would say that guy's not cutting it. That guy's not doing the, or guy or gal, whatever it is not doing the job. Or something was wrong. I can sort of understand how you all might not think about it because of your other processing, the way you approach things. But he, is it he? Failed. I mean, pretty seriously, it seems to me. So I would wonder whether it would be appropriate to have him stay on, at least insofar as it talks about overseeing compliance in our jurisdiction, unless somebody can explain to me why he didn't really totally fail in his job. So I'll bring that up for discussion, I guess, as to whether or not we would want to enhance your condition. But am I overreacting, do you think? I'm sure you think I am overreacting, but can you rationalize how you think I'm overreacting?
Well, first of all, I would assume that typically what happens when we've been selected as the licensee and we're moving towards operations, we would submit all kinds of internal controls and standard operating procedures to the Gaming Commission for approval, at which time the commission would have the chance to say, well, look, we really think now that we've really thought about it and we really think there should be this requirement for this committee and that committee. So, and I don't want you to think that we're not serious about compliance. We're very serious, and a lot of the compliance issues also get picked up in our internal audit, reviews. So there are checks and balances going on, and a lot of the issues in terms of like relationships with vendors or that type of thing, again, the state has taken the responsibility on those reviews. But I think in terms of today's decision, the commission is going to have the chance to review every facility's internal controls and operating procedures, and to give their input on what they'd like to see at that time.
We made if I'm not mistaken, we made a condition in the prior proposal report that every member of the audit committee of this privately held company be independent. Is that right? Not be part of management.
No,
No, that's
No.
not right.
I don't think so.
Not every
The
year.
one
I have my-
individual who was part of management was not to continue in that,
I'd have to check my notes, but it was, it's a slightly different type of company. Cordis is a privately held company, and Mass Gaming is slightly different, but I'd have to look at my notes as to the recommendation, but I think it was external members. I think Steve, Mr. Commissioner, you're correct.
And we would want to make sure that ownership is part of the internal audit committee, because it's a big part of the
Yeah,
risk management of our.
Right, yeah, I get that.
It was a member of management that was also a member or serving as part of the audit committee, which would represent a conflict. Because it's
So it
somebody
was not-
overseeing themselves. It's different from these issues, I understand it.
The audit committee.
So
Right.
it's different from compliance, but I'm talking about audit now. Let's just take the time to find where is the place? Bernie, do you have it in your?
I think it's
Page 10, isn't it, of the cover letter?
It's page 10, yeah.
paragraph 3.
Yeah,
Page
the
11,
Page
I'm
11,
sorry.
yes. Yeah, I think the issue was management personnel on the audit committee raises a potential conflict of interest, so that may be the key word, the
Well,
management.
but what our recommendation says is, IAB recommends that the applicant be required to restructure audit committees of any of its related entities that conduct business in Mass to replace any management personnel with independent representatives.
Right, so management
So
personnel.
no management personnel, as opposed to an owner.
Yeah.
Or
Okay,
director.
okay, fair enough, I get that.
For instance, we don't have any property management on our audit committee. It's all
I get you.
ownership and
Okay,
independent.
that's a fair distinction, I get it. All right, the other stuff is pretty quick. Same thing about the Mass Sup, I mentioned that.
Yes,
It's not
yeah,
referred
and I'll
to.
take care of that for
Um,
subsequent letters.
Another question that I asked Mr. Grove earlier on is on page 57, there, and others, but particularly on page 57, there's a list of, I'm sorry, this was not the one I asked Mr. Grove. On 57, there are a list of all the other entities that one of the qualifiers is involved in. Do we have, Mr. Grove, do we have any way to know what all these other entities do? Do we, other than just sort of ask generically, who, in other words, who a qualifier, this doesn't go particularly to Cordish, this goes to a number of similar entities, but do we have any way of figuring out who these qualifiers are in business with via a list like this?
Commissioner, we do. That serves as a guide to our investigators when they conduct an interview with each individual applicant, and they explore the people behind the companies that are listed there.
They do use it, so you explored the people behind all these entities?
That was brought up in the interviews, and I believe,
No, okay.
which particular individual are you speaking
Well, I'm
of?
looking at page 57, and I just look at this huge long list of entities and just wondering who are our qualifiers in business with?
While he's looking for that, I can give you our perspective
Yeah.
on it. In our case, other than where it's obviously a Riggs or a PNC, the LLCs that are listed would be all Cordish entities with similar, it would include the partners here or other internal partners within Cordish. For the most part. And we did review that with Spectrum's investigators.
These are property, aren't these in page 57 property LLCs?
Yeah, there would be individual
Yeah.
other real estate
Right.
or
It's not
operating.
necessarily
entities.
another company. I mean,
Yeah.
They're not outside, other than the obvious Riggs or, they're our
they're
entities.
your portfolio.
Okay.
If I could expand on that, we learned very quickly in this investigation that the way the partners in Cordish operate is they have the Cordish company umbrella, but it seems every entity under that is formed for a particular purpose, either to apply for a gaming license in Massachusetts, to run a casino in Maryland, to operate a restaurant in Kansas City. So that's why there is such a long list of entities in this
Yeah,
report.
it's not, this, as I said, this question was not really about Cordish per se. It just happened to come up because of that list I was thinking about. But one of the things we would like to know is who are our qualifiers in business with? And what other businesses are they in and who are they doing business with? And what you've listed here is not Cordish companies, at least it doesn't say they're Cordish companies, it just says a bunch of other boards and directorships and partnerships and so forth. And I just was curious whether we have a mechanism, what is our investigative mechanism for figuring out who all our qualifiers are in business with, beyond the entities that we are already investigating?
I can assure you that the database research that is done identifies individuals and the companies they are tied to, and then further investigation is done on those companies to see if there's any public partners known, and also the companies are spoken about with each individual applicant at the time of their interview.
Okay. I think the last thing on page 19, this was something that I asked Mr. Grove about. There was this elaborate series of transfers of shares of LLCs, one place to another, more elaborate than I could follow. And I mentioned, I mean, it didn't raise any red flags particularly. I just wondering what that was all about, because we have had conversations about tax avoidance and the aggressiveness of tax avoidance. And if this related to that, that might be something we'd want to think about. And he said,
Yes, you would ask essentially.
Not as to tax avoidance.
There was a series of transfers of the ownership interest of the Cordish family too, which was owned by David Cordish. And our CPA discussed that with him. And it was our understanding that essentially this company was formed to be used as a vehicle for lending to projects undertaken by other partners within the Cordish umbrella. They wanted to compile assets within Cordish family too that were liquid, so they could be easily valued by subsequent gaming regulators who were looking into whether that entity was financially stable. To put it another way, if they had real estate holdings located in Cordish family too, it's difficult to put a valuation on that. So they made sure that the assets in that operation were liquid. You could easily value it. In addition, there were some transfers out to some trust that were controlled by David Cordish. And it simply, to our review, it just seemed to be tax and estate planning purposes. We didn't see anything nefarious in these transfers.
okay. That's it for me. Anybody else? Questions, thoughts? All right, I guess we can deliberate. Thank you. We'll call you back if we need help. Thank you very much.
Thank
for
you.
all
I
your-
just want to comment for the record, because I did it with the mass gaming, given that they haven't identified a site and they're looking at Leominster. Is it Leominster? Leominster. That as we would with any entity with a site, we would also investigate any issues relating to their location, site, land deal, and et cetera, and that would be reported to the commission.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody want to summarize or comment?
Again, I see, I think we asked questions, the questions were answered. The report itself is comprehensive and clear, and I see no reason not to move this company. And from my standpoint, the suitability is positive and clear and convincing.
What about the issue that I raised about this, the person, there is an outside person on the compliance committee who ipso facto wasn't really doing their job.
I don't think that's a matter for us to handle. I think that it was very clear to me that Mr. Weinberg understood the issue and has addressed the issue. Those things, because whosever responsibility it was, I don't know that that's for us to determine. Other than the problem will be rectified and everyone's aware that we would expect that's something we take seriously here. So I see no issue with moving that forward.
Commissioner McHugh, what's your thought about that?
I agree, frankly, with Commissioner Cameron for the following reason. Number one, there aren't any, apart from the several reports that we have here, there isn't any report of regulatory and other compliance mistakes, problems. So that however they did it, it didn't generate problems. Secondly, having, and we all have seen, small groups of tightly held companies who are very successful, as this company is, sometimes run themselves with a little bit more informality than a large public company would. I think that's undesirable from a regulatory standpoint. I think we need to make sure that doesn't happen, but I don't think it is, entirely unexpected. And so I join you in saying that can't happen here, but I don't assign a great deal of, I don't put a great deal of emphasis on it as an historical matter. And I do think going on and looking at the report and the contents and the presentations that were made here today and Mr. Weinberg's demeanor and candor, I do think that considering all the circumstances, that there is clear and convincing evidence of Cordish's suitability.
Gentlemen?
Go ahead.
I
Commissioner.
completely agree with Commissioner McHugh and Commissioner Cannon. See anything here that would, obviously coming into play in a new state with our new regulations, they'll need to adjust their compliance efforts in that regard, but nothing here that I would see that would convince me that they aren't suitable to move to the next phase.
And I would echo all of those comments as well. I think the record and testimony shows that they are clearly and convincingly suitable, in my opinion.
And I would agree with that. Commissioner McHugh, do you want to offer a series of observations and actions here?
Yes, I'm going to proceed, Mr. Chairman, if I might, in the way I did before. Before the commissioners, is a two-page resolution document in the form that we discussed earlier, in the form that we used earlier. I would ask the commissioners to take a look at it, make certain that the text is agreeable, and then I would propose simply to summarize each of the paragraphs and ask that we adopt it. It concludes, as did the last one, a finding that PPE Casino Resorts MA LLC is qualified and that we're prepared to have them move to the next phase. So if you want to, everybody wants to take a minute to look at it, then I'll summarize it and we can move forward.
It's the same document.
It's
but
the
with names,
same
right?
document, but the names have been changed, basically. So this document recites, and this is a summary, of course, because as before, we're voting on the text of this, on adopting the text of this document, not this summary. This document says that the entity, PPE Casino Resorts, MA LLC, filed its Phase 1 application in conformity with the regulations, paid all its fees, that the IEB conducted a thorough investigation, that the IEB recommends that the Commission issue a positive determination of suitability with a number of conditions attached, not to the suitability, but to the license, if a license is ultimately issued, that the Commission agrees with the IEB's recommendation, and therefore that the Commission finds that the entity PPE is suitable, issues a positive determination of suitability, and says that it is fit to proceed to the next stage, but that the Commission will continue to review its suitability and continuing suitability as the Phase 2 process proceeds, and indeed thereafter. So I'd move that the resolution stating in more formal terms what I've just summarized be adopted by the Commission.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion as offered? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Congratulations to our second qualified applicant. Find a location, and good luck.
Thank you.
Any other business, folks?
No.
All right, there being none other, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you all.